Welcome, Shana, to video number 5. We are continuing now with the idea, why is Aramaic important? What does it reveal? What does it uncover for us? In the last 4 that we've done, I've done several of showing you the differences in translation from Aramaic into English. And now I started in number 4, looking at the idioms in the Bible. What is an idiom? An idiom is a peculiar expression of speech that we use all the time when we're talking to friends, when we're with people, and we when we're on the phone, for instance, we say, "Oh, have you heard so and so has been in hot water now for 3 months?" We understand what that means. Or we heard of people losing their marbles. And we use all kinds of language like that when we're talking, but we don't think anything about it because we use it naturally and it's so common with us. But we don't think about that when it comes to the biblical writers. But the biblical writers also used Semitic Aramaic forms of idiom. And it was the same in Hebrew. It was Hebrew Aramaic, makes no difference. It's still idiomatic. And Aramaic and Hebrew are sister languages. They're like this. They come from the same roots. In fact, much of the roots of Hebrew are Aramaic roots. And I just said that just to clarify the reason why we know these are Semitic idioms. One that people have often asked me about is why God would turn Lot's wife into a pillar of salt. Okay, first of all, it doesn't say that God did it at all. And you have to understand that when you're reading the episode, of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and the destruction of those cities is told in the book of Genesis. And it is in the 19th chapter where this is told. Without going into it, I just want to explain the Aramaic idiom that is used, the Semitic idiom that is used here. In the 26th verse of the 19th chapter, it says, "But his wife," meaning Lot's wife, "looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt." She became a pillar of salt. God didn't strike her with that. People assume God did that, but it doesn't say so at all. And the reason they assume that particular notion is because the angels told Lot, or the messengers really is the term, the spiritual messengers that came to Lot and told him that when you flee, do not look back. No, don't keep looking back. Did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? Is it destroyed? No, don't look back means don't stop to keep looking back because you don't want to be caught in the earthquake and explosion of the Buddha pits that flew up in the air and came down and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So you have to understand that that's why people assume that God did that, because the messengers told them don't look back. But don't look back wasn't mean because God would kill you if you look back. It meant don't be detained on the road. Get out. And in fact, Lot asked if he could go into a little town, a little hamlet that's a little ways out of Sodom and Gomorrah called Zoar. And he did. He stayed right there in Zoar. But what happened here with Lot's wife? In these Semitic tongues, and it's the same thing in Hebrew, there's no difference. When they talk about someone becoming paralyzed or having a stroke or cannot move their body, that they call that being turned to stone, or to as in Lot's wife's case, a pillar of salt. It is an expression of speech that they use. So when she turned and saw all that she had left in that city, that was where she was living, in that place. And some of her sons-in-law and some of her daughters and other sons were killed in that terrible catastrophe that took place, an earthquake, and the Buddha pits all exploded and came up and out on the land. So she couldn't take it. It was too much, and she became paralyzed. She died from seeing that horrible scene. It was too much for her to bear. And so they used a typical term of speech in the Semitic languages of Hebrew and Aramaic. And it means to become paralyzed and to die. It can also mean that they passed on, and maybe not immediately, but soon after they passed on. There's another story in the scriptures that talks about this, and that's between Nabal and his wife and David. David was fleeing the king, that is King Saul, from Israel, and he stopped at the ranch or this farmer's place in Israel, and Nabal's wife helped David escape. So what happened here? She had to tell her husband. She gave him food. She fed all those who were fleeing with David. She did gave him all kinds of things, and then he left. And if her husband found out, because Nabal did not favor David, he favored King Saul, and he didn't want to get into trouble with King Saul either. So what was he to do? What was he to do? He did not know that his wife, Abigail, was doing this. So what happened? That night, he had a little feast at his house and invited people over, and they celebrated, and he drank kind of heavily, and she thought, no, I will not tell him now. I'll tell him in the morning when he wakes up. And so that's exactly what she did. This is in the story, is in First Samuel. First Samuel. And the I don't know whether it's the 37th chapter or the 37th verse. Let me take another double look at that. No, it's 25. Chapter 25 and verse 37. And what it says that in the morning when he got up, and of course he didn't drink, he wasn't drunk or anything, but it just wasn't as like he was that night. So she told him what she had done, and his heart died within him. It died within his heart died, and he became like stone. He became as stone. In other words, paralyzed. But he didn't die. If you read the next verse, he didn't die until 10 days later. But he was stone, like stone, for 10 days. But in fact, the word there is not like stone, became as stone. So to become stone or a pillar of salt means to become paralyzed. You can't move. So either he suffered a stroke and he could not move, but then later he died. And then I'll tell you something else that next verse says, which is not good at all. It says, and the Lord struck him. It struck him. In other words, because he did not want his wife Abigail helping King, well, he wasn't king, but helping David when he was fleeing from King Saul. And because he knew this was a bad thing to do, and he couldn't take it. And he became like stone because his heart died within him. Then, what have you done? What have you done? And then it says, and the Lord killed him. The Lord slew him. No. That's the scribe saying, the Lord didn't come down and say, hey, I let you live for 10 days being paralyzed. Now I'm going to kill you. No, this is how they understood things. When the person died like that, the Lord took them. So the Lord struck him. That's how they thought in those ancient days. The Lord does not kill, even though you'll find scriptures on that. The Lord does not kill us. The Lord does not take us. What the Lord does is receive us. He receives us when we make our transition. Again, this is a little bit of insight into the Aramaic language and Hebrew and the Semitic idioms behind what we read in the scriptures. We take it all too literally. God doesn't do any of this stuff. And when it came to Lot's wife, It didn't say God struck her. It says that she became paralyzed from looking back and seeing the destruction of everything that she had loved. And she couldn't take it and suffered the paralyzation and died. So that's what happened, but God didn't do it. Again, new insight from the language of Jesus, Aramaic. And Jesus used some Aramaic idioms that people misunderstand. And what are they? Well, probably in the next video. I'll see you then. Bye for now.